Well, folks, Kansas State basketball has their first high school commit in the class of 2025. We've got a prospect to discuss who just joined the Cats as of Wednesday afternoon. A big deal for the fellas and something cool to discuss. Before I do jump into the main topic here of today's video, hit the subscribe button. It helps out immensely. I'm trying to hit 3,000 subs. We're like 25 away. Help your boy get to 3,000. It's a huge thing to do, and it means a lot to see all the support on your channel as we continue to get through this offseason together. Not quite there yet, but we're definitely working towards the transfer portal opening up and a lot of that type of coverage. So be sure to hit the subscribe button if it's your first time here or your 100th and you just haven't subscribed by now. Now might be the play to help your boy out with that. Now let me jump right into the prospect in today's video. We have a 6'7" forward that is Ashton Magee of South Jones High School in Mississippi. A cool commitment to see, not a massive recruitment process when it comes to who K-State had to beat out to land Ashton Magee, but I'll read you through his offer list. We've talked about him a couple times on the channel. If you haven't seen either of those videos, I'll kind of give the brief overview of what I've said in the past two. It wasn't anybody too crazy. There wasn't a ton of high major offers, but there was some teams interested in him regardless. You got Georgia State, you got Bethune-Cookman, Georgia Southern, Monmouth, New Mexico State, New Orleans, Nicholls State, Norfolk State, Ole Miss, there's a big name right there, Southern Miss, Stetson, and USF. Those are the teams interested in Ashton Magee. As alongside like Mississippi State announced they were trying to get him more as a walk-on than give him an official offer. So there's definitely interest, but nobody really pulled the plug outside of Kansas State and shot that offer his way. But K-State gets the job done. I think it's a cool ad. I think there's some upside here. I think he's got talent. I'll show some highlights that I've shown in the past, but I'll show some stuff on screen here because you'll see his game-breaking athleticism. That's the first thing that pops. He's got this unreal athleticism that he utilizes on both ends of the court in transition, offense, and defense. He's also got this jump shot where there's a massive amount of elevation where it's just straight vertical, but there is a little bit of concern with the shooting motion that I know people will definitely cling to. I, for one, am kind of on the side of this kid could get to Kansas State and develop into a really good player, but I do think he's going to need some work. And I don't mean that to sound negative. I don't mean that to say anything wrong about Ashton Magee. I think he's a good high school prospect, and he's got some good stats to go with it. For reference, let me just toss that out there. He's averaging 23.5 points per game, 8.3 rebounds, 3.2 blocks, and 57% shooting from the floor, and also shooting 33.1% from three on 4.1 attempts per game. Armin Jovic has been kind of the man behind the scenes talking about Kansas State's connection to Ashton Magee, saying, hey, he's one of the best athletes in his class, and we got a good one, to say the least in that terms. What I will say is this, and I will challenge this by kind of pitching a couple of different things. In the past, when it comes to these portal videos or high school recruiting videos, I've kind of just glazed a little bit too much, and I haven't given my honest critique of where the kid needs to improve, what the challenge is for him, what it's going to look like at the next level. But I do think that's an element of stuff we should explore here. Ashton Magee, I do think, is a really good player. He's got the stats up, but I do wonder about the difference between being a really good player at the high school level versus being at in the Big 12 Conference. This is the best basketball conference in America. You're going to have to bring it. And I won't sit here and try to BS you and say his athleticism won't convert. I will never say that. If a kid's an athlete, he's an athlete. Doesn't matter what level he's at. But the ball skills, the shooting, some stuff like that are kind of the intangibles, you're going to have to work in. You're going to have to get to the gym. You're going to have to put some work in off the court to get to a spot where you can have impact in the basketball game. Just because I don't quite know if he's going to be a guy that's going to see much play time for Kansas State this coming season. Not to say he's not a good player, not to say he couldn't, but with freshmen in college basketball, you have to be a damn good basketball player to see immediate impact. And a kid that we all kind of chalked up to be a star was David Castillo, and he had his freshman mistakes, he had his moments, but the kid's only playing about 10 minutes a game. Now, as of late, he's playing a couple more minutes, and he's definitely stepped up and played some better basketball, but you have to understand that tempered expectations for freshmen is kind of where I'm at in the sense, and it's not to say that it's because of Ashton Magee or it's because of whoever you want to say. If it's not a top 40 player, or if it's Christian Anderson from Texas Tech, there are very few isolated experiences where a freshman steps into high major basketball and dominates. That's very, isolated, very rare. Data Ames is a great case for Kansas State basketball. Even though top 70 player, really good, talented dude with a ton of offers, Ashton Magee is going to have an uphill battle to get to that point. But it's not to say that he can't. And I think it's a good idea considering the roster is expanding to 15 scholarships for just about everybody and their brother in college basketball. I guess for everybody. I don't know why I'm analogying, but everybody's going to have the opportunity to have 15 people on their roster. So whether Ashton Magee plays and sees time in the rotation or if he redshirts, I don't really see it as a problem. I'm not going to sit here and try to pretend that it is. I think it's a cool thing to see. It does stink that we're just now landing our first prospect in the class of 2025. I won't sugarcoat that. If this is someone you had interest in back in November or earlier in the summer, you might want to get that thing done to try to set some momentum for the future recruiting class. But I understand that it didn't quite go our way, and I won't try to sell you that it did and say like this fixes everything. But you do at least like that the coaching staff is prioritizing younger players, prioritizing freshmen, because college basketball, as flawed as it is, you can't get away from not recruiting guys. That's what I'd say about that. you can get guys in the transfer portal that'll have massive impact. Kansas State fans kind of saw what happens when you don't have a ton of continuity and you go portal heavy. You have a couple guys that hit, a couple guys that miss, something in between, so on and so forth. But there's guys like David Gasson that I will focus on and say, you can absolutely develop and become a star. I was not the biggest David Gasson guy 2 years ago, 3 years ago, even in the Elite Eight run where there wasn't much to critique. You just saw that, okay, he doesn't have much impact in terms of anything beyond defensive rebound. He can't convert shots from the free throw line, which is a liability reason. He can't be out there for extended minutes completely. There was a lot of holes in his game, to be perfectly honest with you. The kid showed up and worked. He didn't BS. He didn't call out the fan base and say, be nicer to me, do this, do this. He showed up and worked. And so I'm reserving the right to say any of these kids, even if you're the best player in the class, if you're, a 3-star kid that's maybe got an offer from East Carolina and that's it, if you can play ball, people will find you. Super quick break. If you're watching this video and you're not subscribed, 63% of the people watching this video right now are currently not subscribed to the YouTube channel, and feel free absolutely to ignore this and skip this, whatever the case is. But those of you that are watching right now and are unsubscribed, be sure and consider hitting that subscribe button if you love Kansas State, if you appreciate the channel. It's a great way to support me as I continue to grow on this journey, and it's also incredible to bring more K-State fans in like yourself on a consistent basis to see more of my K-State content. Once again, if you're in that 63% or if you're in the alternative in the 37%, I love and appreciate you. Back to the Cats. I'm hoping that's what happens with Ashton Magee because I do think he's a good player. I think he has upside. He can be a really, really good player. The challenge for him in my mind is to, and this isn't to throw him under the bus, so this might sound like a jerk thing to say, is to have more impact than Buddy Rich because we've seen guys that have explosive athleticism, and to be perfectly honest, their tape doesn't look that different from one another. Obviously, Ashton Magee is much more conditioned for this moment rather than Buddy. Buddy's a physical specimen, but he's not exactly a conditioning type dude when it comes to staying on the court for 30 minutes a game. It's not Buddy's game. And it doesn't seem like Buddy took all the opportunities that he could have to have lasting impact for K-State. You hope that this kid does. And I will vouch for him in this. There's a video I showed a couple weeks ago about Ashton Magee where his coach was talking about him, some of his teammates were talking about him, and it is everything you want to hear. It's if you could choose to handpick a basketball player as a person and as a player on the court, this is the person you'd make because he's an incredible athlete, incredibly gifted, does anything you need, does anything you ask of him, and he sounds like a really selfless kid, whether that be his coaching staff talking about him, some of his teammates, some of his family members. There's been a lot of good experiences already with Ashton Magee, and I'm hoping to see that translate to the basketball court here in the near future, but I also don't know what that looks like. We'll see if Ashton Magee gets on campus and turns some heads. I'll be interested to see what happens there, but that'll pretty much do it for today's video. For all intents and purposes, K-State has their first high school basketball commit out of the way. This is Ashton Magee, a kid with explosive highlights, but does have the challenge to say, okay, how can I overcome just being hype? I want to be an absolute basketball player, be the full package, and see what I can do. That's the challenge for Ashton Magee. Where does his impact lie going forward? We'll see what happens, what the future looks like, but for today's video, that's all we're going to cover, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Go Cats!